into hour number 3. Thank you so much for joining us. It is the 20th day of May, 2013. I am your host, Alex Jones, and we're going to have Joel Skousen, who's in studio with us, on for, I think, about an hour special interview tonight. We'll see how long it goes. On strategic relocation. What does that really mean? Government strategically locates. Corporations strategically locate. I noticed in his book, that's the best research I've seen out there, in the film we produced, Strategic Relocation, that where he's saying live is where the globalists are moving in many cases, but he picks areas alternate to that, but still close by. And you know, where I live, which I separately did my own research, then later found he'd also recommended, the hill country of Austin, is one of the few safer areas in a whole constellation of problems. And that's basic. Mammals try to pick a place that they think is safe. They act like being prepared and being ready is kooky or weird. That is a instinct of moronicness, or kind of an anti-instinct they try to drum into you. But that's tonight, nightly news, 7 o'clock this evening. And we're going to interview him today on the for Obama Deception 2. So he's got a grueling work schedule. No, I know he'll love it. He also just survived. We'll talk about that at the end of the hour. A harrowing plane crash they said was 1 in a million to survive, much less be unscathed. Talk about guardian angels. So we're glad to have you here, Joel, in person. And he flew on a commercial aircraft to get here. He, of course, is a former Marine Corps, was it captain or more in the Marines, carrier pilot, naval pilot. So interesting individual. We're going to have Joel Skousen with us in this hour, though, to cover the latest developments on the IRS, the spying on the reporters, and where he thinks that's going politically. And is this a chilling effect, or are they trying to divert off of Benghazi? I think they hoped that at first, but this is actually capturing people's imagination. You know, how do you pray? What is your pro-life? They told pro-life groups, you've got to go out and 50% of the time be pro-abortion. Government can't do that. They can't tell you what your First Amendment is. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. That's how the First Amendment begins. Then it's the freedom of the press, freedom to assemble. So that's all the info we're going to be going over on that front, and then how that ties into Benghazi. And, of course, Joel Skousen is also the editor-in-chief over at worldaffairsbrief.com, and I think has some of the most, from my research, and I'm obsessed with this stuff, folks, so I tend to know what I'm talking about a little bit. It has some of the best piercing analysis out there, and so he joins us to break all this down. Joel Skousen, good to have you here with us.
It's good to be with you, Alex. I really, you know, when we talk about news, we've got a lot of facts out there, but it is the analysis that makes your stuff valuable, that makes my stuff valuable, because we never get all the news. This is a conspiracy of omission of what's true and what's false. You just have a lot of stuff missing, and we have to piece the puzzle back together.
You've had a couple of weeks now to ruminate. Got a new report out at worldaffairsbrief.com right now. You've had some time to sit back and look at Benghazi. You were on right after it happened. Your analysis has turned out to be dead on. Same analysis, basically, of Colonel Schaefer. Same analysis of some of our other guests. I want to recap that coming up, but looking at IRS Gate, looking at Spygate, looking at Intimidation Gate, what's really going on here?
First of all, it's important to remember, I was reviewing just this morning the church committee hearings about the CIA, where a lot was revealed about the CIA. And in that, Walter Mondale came out and said directly, now we've got evidence here that the IRS has been targeting individuals that the government views as hostile to their point of view, and that they're subjecting them to yearly audits, one after another. Now, he didn't specify who they are, but I happen to know. When I was chairman of the Conservative National Committee, I talked to Bunker Hunt, and I talked to a lot of the other funders of various conservative and Christian points, and they were all being audited every year. We now know that that was targeted. That was clear back in the 80s when that was going on. It's still going on. So now we have a cover-up about the fact that this has been going on. The press isn't focusing on that. What they're focusing on is the fact that the president fired somebody who was, in fact, going to resign and was going to, in fact, be leaving. Steve Miller, the acting IRS chief, had nothing to do with this.
So a total cynical fraud.
A total cynical fraud. But it's even worse. You have Joseph Grant, who was just put in the place of Susan Ingram, who was, in fact, in charge of this division over tax-exempt groups. He was just put in to replace her. A graduate stepped up, and he had to step down as a second one because it wasn't enough to fire Steve Hall. And Susan Hall Ingram now is in charge of the IRS tax policy for Obamacare, of sticking it to those of us who don't have insurance by choice because we don't like the medical establishment system.
And now the woman that ordered all this illegal spying and harassment, she's the head of the Obamacare division with our records. I mean, it's clear they plan to use the IRS as their Gestapo.
That's right. And Lois Lerner, who's the actual on-hands in daily charge of the division, was not fired. And she certainly has to know about this. But it goes beyond, as I say, the Obamacare. So that brings up the case, or goes beyond the IRS. Currently, it goes beyond the Obama administration. It was going on during the Bush administration, the Clinton administration, and clear back on. Even during the Reagan administration, the IRS was targeting people. We have a runaway dark side of government. We have legitimate CIA and dark side CIA. We have legitimate FBI and dark side CIA. And in the IRS, we have legitimate, honest people doing IRS work, and we have dark side IRS, and they aren't allowed to know what the other is doing.
Via compartmentalization.
Exactly. And so I don't expect to see any change. There's going to be some, congressional investigations. As in Benghazi, they're not going to go after the real problem, which is who gave. I mean, look at the Treasury Inspector General. Comes out with a report that this was a managerial problem, that somehow these magically appeared, these criteria which were incorrect, and they ended up targeting magically, without any human intervention, some 500 conservative groups.
Well, I've even seen Rachel Maddow and people say we need to go after these groups. Look at their tax exemption. Media Matters put a memo out 3 years ago saying we're going to infiltrate media groups and destroy them. That's why it's encouraging. The head of the RNC said Obama is running a guerrilla war. He said this over the weekend on Fox against conservatives. That's absolutely true. It is a guerrilla war. They deny what they're doing while they do it. Of course they ordered it, from Fast and Furious to this.
Well, in the Cincinnati, our IRS person said anonymously, without giving his name, that everything that we do at the IRS comes down from the very
Well, of course it does.
Yes. It's just like the DEA when they cover up for drugs that are imported from Mexico and they refuse to let the snooping dogs go in after trucks that are sealed in Mexico. They say orders come from Washington. So that's what happens. But the Treasury was covering up for this today on their IRS investigation. They said, we interviewed every official we could talk to, and they assured us that no one outside of the IRS had any influence on this tax policy. But that's not the issue, Alex. About who outside the IRS, they're assuming that if it's political interference with the IRS, it has to be from some politician outside the agency. This has been going on from within the agency for decades.
Well, I know for a fact that they use food trucks with packaged food out of Mexico with the cocaine hidden in it. And one time the state police stopped a truck, found 3 tons of cocaine, and were ordered to turn it over. And then they deliver it, and then it's brought into a major grocery store chain and distributed out. And it's just well known. And then the cops want to pull me over and ask if I have drugs in my car. I mean, this is ridiculous.
Yeah. So there is a dark side of every portion of government in terms of enforcement, and it's starting to get out more and more. But when it gets out, and this is what we're seeing, it's going to be the big thing we're going to have to discuss, is whether or not they're going to take down Obama over these things, because there's 4 major scandals now that have piled up.
That's what I want to ask you. Why did the scandals come out now from your intel and your analysis? What does this signify, and where is it going?
It is hard to tell. In the AP scandal, for example, of the news, I know how this happened. Now, I want to be very, very clear with your listeners that the government surveils every form of communication. They don't listen to it all.
They record it all.
They record it all. It's all digitally recorded.
And then they go back when they want to.
That's right. They go back. Actually, they're sifting. They have computers going through and sifting and picking out keywords and compartmentalizing. They have basic compartments for criminals. They have basic compartments for enemies. They have compartments for allies. They spy on Israel. They spy on France. They spy on Britain. They don't like to say that, but they do that. And those allies, to a certain extent, spy on us as well. But they also have compartments for dissidents, and those are divided into right and left. By far the largest compartment are people like you and I and followers who believe in the Constitution. Those are considered future domestic enemies. And
they've now bled over and admitted their total obsession is on us because we know who they are. We know the ballgame. It's not Al-Qaeda. It's us.
And to a certain extent, there are those on the right, on the left, who are legitimate liberals, meaning they are concerned about civil liberties. You know, they do have a leftist bent, which we don't agree with. But they are also the enemies because in many regards, those leftist liberals, like Glenn Greenwald of The Guardian, does a yeoman's work.
Yeah, he's right here coming out against the DOJ.
That's exactly right. He's attacking those things. So they want to discredit those people eventually. So they're keeping track of all those. But what happened in the AP case, as well as the recent today, it broke about the Fox News, Mr. Rosen that was surveilled, is that in order to go through and do a detailed search and get all the listening done, they do a special search that goes through DOJ that tasks the CIA and the NSA to pull up everything they've got on this particular person. In this case, it was a very broad search. Well, somebody down the line leaked this to the AP, recognized this is an illegal call for a search, because to do a subpoena, the DOJ has specific procedures that they've got to follow through, including alerting the news organization, AP, that we're going to do an investigation and we're going to subpoena records and give them a chance to appear in court and say, show cause about whether or not you really have the power. And they didn't do that.
And again, the truth is they're already grabbing everything. It's just when they want to now use it in court, they go get the subpoenas and everything.
That's right. Now, what happens here, and this is what we've got to determine, is whether or not those leaks were purposeful, or whether or not they were actually a whistleblower within the DOJ.
It looks to me like it's a whistleblower because this is going to hurt them, but maybe they're going to double back and use it as a chilling effect. Stay there. We're going to be right back with Joel Skousen, editor-in-chief of worldaffairsbrief.com.
While we fight to retain our liberty, while we fight to expose globalism, we have to realize we're talking about a very powerful combination of power.
Renowned author and expert Joel Skousen breaks down the globalist plan to shut down America and stage a new world war.
In one day, America will go from day to night. And if you haven't prepared in advance, there's not enough time to prepare in 24 hours, even if you saw it that early.
Coming to the InfoWar in November is our new documentary film presentation.
Strategic relocation is a systematic way to think strategically in the future about how do I safeguard.
Joel Skousen, Strategic Relocation.
The freeways are going to be crowded, they're going to run out of gasoline, they're going to run out of food, and then they're going to start to go north and south of those freeways.
Joel Skousen is renowned as one of the world's foremost experts in strategic relocation and the securing of your home.
We talk about natural disasters, the health environment, we talk about pollution, the water quality. My personal experience about being in every one of these states.
Government is digging in for the organized, incremental collapse of society and world war.
The U.S. isn't building huge underground bases and bunkers because of some terrorist threat. They know that a massive nuclear attack is coming. They want that attack to come. Most people won't even be ready and won't be able to get out of town when any of these nuclear weapons fall, because there'll be absolute panic.
There is no preparedness without strategy.
What I tell people is that you do have time. Prepare wisely in advance.
This Christmas, give the gift of preparedness. Strategic Relocation, the film, with Joel Skousen and Alex Jones. By the way, this is breaking news at Infowars.com. Adam Kokesh should be charged with assaulting a federal officer. So they come up while he's giving a speech, grab him, he puts his hands up, slam him to the ground, and then charge him. Cart before the horse. Why were they arresting him to begin with? And then how did he assault him, which he clearly didn't? They're going to have trouble making that case, but the video and everything else. Absolutely. Let's punch up his mic there. Joel, go ahead.
Yeah, the thing that I observed, and he did correctly, he wasn't smoking marijuana. If they were going to arrest anyone, they had to arrest the ones that were violating the law of the park and arrest them. He was merely the spokesman. They were clearly going after him and took him down. They've got video. I don't think they're going to be able to make this stick if they allow in court, and that's the big question, whether or not they'll allow any of that evidence to come in from the private hands. But I'm not in favor of irritating the government on illegal acts, and you have to be very careful when you do to appear very, very innocent. You don't go around calling the police criminals, even if they're in a criminal act. But I think that we need to support the fact that we've got a First Amendment right that has been violated here. I know that's your position, Alex, and but I still think Adam needs to be very careful about how he approaches these actions.
I agree. Even the Washington Post kind of dished a bunch of dirt on him, not real dirt, but saying he's a provocateur, but admitted, well, it looks like his rights were violated. Yeah. I mean, even they had to admit that. And people better if you don't support other people's rights, you're going to lose yours. I mean, it's so elementary. Now, you were telling me during the break, this is a short segment, because you've run some of the biggest conservative organizations in the country, Joel, about back when you were in Washington in the 80s. Tell people what happened. I mean, to let people know, we don't say this to scare you. We do this to show you how illegal the government is. I mean, how it's out of control. Tell people what happened to you and then get back into this AP thing.
This happened as chairman of the Conservative National Committee, and I had an office in Washington, D.C., and I was in communication with several of the liberty groups in El Salvador and Guatemala. And there was this young Army major, reserve major, who was trying to influence the conservative groups, and I didn't trust him. And so I warned in a telephone call my compatriots down there in El Salvador that he's coming down to visit, but you better not trust him, and why I thought so. Within 15 minutes, that guy was standing in front of my desk saying, "Don't you ever talk about me to anyone on the telephone."
And he wasn't in your building. He was from the military.
Right. That's right.
So they were listening right then. He drove right over.
That's exactly. So this was Echelon. This is a satellite system that's surveilling any overseas communications, et cetera. And of course, this was purely domestic. This was, my telephone, and my rights were violated. They didn't have a warrant, of course. This happened instantaneously. They didn't go before a judge. But it just told me right then, they surveil everything. Now,
well, the congressman came out last week and said they know the cloakroom's bugged. And he's like, is that impeachable? Does that rise to the level of impeachment? I mean, it's obviously a violation of the 4th, 5th Amendment. It's obviously a violation of the 10th Amendment. It's the 10th to the states, the separation of powers. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, the surveillance has gotten much worse even since my experience in 1983, because they were just doing telephones, and the Echelon system was only doing things that were wirelessly being transmitted around the world. But now they've got everything digitally. We have whistleblowers from the NSA talking about the ISP systems that the FBI has installed in every major node in the internet, so that every email, every digital cell phone, telephone call is being recorded.
And all your web history, everything. And that was all in the Telecommunications Act of '96, but we were called conspiracy theorists to talk about saying the Statue of Liberty exists. I mean, we're talking about known facts. It's like Gibbs was told, say the drone program doesn't exist overseas. And he's like, but it's been public for years. Just say it doesn't exist. And the press played along with that. And the press better get, folks, if you go along with this purge, it's over. My answer is everybody needs to start whistleblowing in a swarm attack, which they're not going to be able to handle.
Now, we have to remember that the government itself covers all these leaks. In other words, there's no way that anybody leaks to the reporters. Many times they have prosecuted people during the Cheney-Bush administration for trying to get their sources. Well, they know who the sources are, but they can't admit that they know who the sources, because they know they'd be, so they go to court. They try to get the courts, and the courts always lay down and do what the government wants. It's very, very interesting. But the leaks about government torture, the leaks about government surveillance were done, in my opinion, on purpose back in the Bush-Cheney administration.
Yeah, to scare everybody.
Well, not just to scare. What they did is give Congress an excuse to then react to it and say, well, we'd better give them some more authority to surveil. In other words, we leak a mistake. We say, oh, we've got to...
Oh, because they're illegally doing it. How about we just get rid of the law? That's what in fact, the New York Times said that last week. The answer is just get rid of any of it. Yeah. We'll shove a microphone down your throat. Stay there. Let's come back. Long segment coming up. You're right, because that's exactly what they're saying. It's like, oh, we committed a murder? We better legalize the murder then. Stay with us. World Affairs Brief editor is in studio with us. He's Joel Skousen. I'm Alex Jones with Infowars.com. Our viewers have demanded it, so now you're going to get it. More pro-Second Amendment gun shows in the month of June.
What we've learned is you cannot hide behind an I-beam when there's a 50 cal present.
Brothers Weapons and Arms, 50 cal ammo review, and more. Coming in the month of June to the InfoWar. Ladies and gentlemen, we're back live, and we're going to get into the other scandals, Benghazi, IRS, all of it. And, you know, I guess Joel's hasn't said what he thinks yet. He says he's not sure, but I agree with him that they're certainly going to use these leaks coming out because they're now saying it. You know what? Let's just get rid of warrants, period. We're trying to keep you safe. But you read Glenn Greenwald in the London Guardian and others, they're pointing out that people they're arresting, like Stephen Kim, talked to the Fox News chief, Washington bureau chief, just publicly. He went there, talked to him. Hey, you're the State Department, person on this. What do you think? You think Kim Jong-un might detonate more nukes to threaten people as underground test? Yeah, we don't have any proof of that, but that's kind of what we think. Oh, well, you're arrested. And then now they're saying that, well, I tell you what, we might go after the Fox reporter for this. I mean, this is really just the brazen criminality of these people now, where they're saying, look, you don't even criticize anything or we'll come after you. But look at this. The impeachment option. Representative Jason Chaffetz, is that how you pronounce it? Chaffetz, a Utah Republican, says President Barack Obama may face impeachment over his administration's response to the Benghazi attack. Yeah, they've been caught lying there, and the Situation Rooms all saw the drones, all saw the stand down. They know that. NATO knows that. And so that's what they're really scared of. But Joel, getting back now to what you've been trying to say in that last short segment, you were talking about how they're going to try to pass stuff on the back of this. You've got the floor. Get into the IRS stuff, the AP stuff, where you think it's going, and then finally Benghazi and where you think the New World Order is right now, and what good people in government, but just in the general public, can do to really push these people back.
Well, my two examples that I started out with were torture and the surveillance, domestic surveillance get caught up in terrorism. And they were admitted, the government, through the leaks that I think they caused, admitted both that they were doing torture, even though they tried to downplay it as something, and that they were surveilling in a limited way that was going beyond the law. And they tried to justify it with Congress so that they had predictable hacks in Congress to introduce immediately legislation allowing this expansion of torture, expansion of enhanced interrogation. And so there was this scenario where the government is using purposeful leaks, and I don't believe the government ever allows any leaks that they don't want out because they surveil everything. They can find out anything. They don't need to go to court to ever find out who a reporter's sources are. They surveil everything. But this appears, my first impression is that both the IRS leak is an inadvertent leak. And the reason I say that has been going on for decades.
Oh, I agree with you. So you agree with me then?
Yes. But the reason that I feel that is that Obama came out and his scriptwriters wrote in, but we must give the due respect to the IRS. I know they're very powerful, but we must not limit their power. In other words, he's trying to forestall anything in Congress that would limit the power of the IRS. That means they're trying to protect the IRS, not expand its authority. Don't do anything to stop. So I think that was inadvertent. I think the AP was inadvertent because it didn't appear to come from a direct government source, and it's not something I don't think they can expand. That is, they cannot expand and say, well, the press isn't going to have the same rights that they are.
What does the phenomenon mean, though? Because I've argued with you, well, not really argue, but talk to you about this, where you're saying, look, a lot of these leaks are fake, or there's no way these people have real sources. I'm finding government people are mad and don't care anymore, and we're getting to the point where they're just willing to leak stuff and go, okay, go ahead and put me in jail for exposing you're a dirty crook.
The problem with this is that after the AP leak, the AP reporters said universally, nobody wants to talk to us anymore. This is a real problem. So it is shutting down whistleblowing. And that may be...
Chilling effect.
It's a chilling effect. Nobody dares talk because everybody realizes, every whistleblower now realizes that the press is being bugged. Now, we knew it before.
Well, you know what the answer is? Mail it to people. Mail it to Infowars.com. Mail it to Drudge. Put a, other address or no address or whatever, and then get it to people.
Isn't this interesting? I tell my clients, too, if they're worried about privacy, Look, everything you tell me in a conversation about your consultation is going to be recorded. Everything is going to be talked about. Either you got to fly me out there to talk about your private situation, or you got to mail it to me. Isn't that ironic that the snail mail is now the safest? Because it requires a human being to intervene in every letter that they open.
And they've got the private offices at all the places where they take it, but still they're lazy and won't do it, and then they don't know what to do with the intelligence. So the answer is go back to snail mail.
But if you go to snail mail and you introduce and you open it up, you've got to photocopy, you've got to scan it. I mean, it's a tremendous costly process. And the government's under sequester. Even the CIA, who has black budget type of thing, doesn't want to put a lot of money in.
Well, how does France communicate with itself? It has the pneumatic tubes. That's the right term, the pressure tubes, and that's under their sewers how the government sends its info, knowing that's going to be hard to scan, with satellite.
No, that's right, and it's physical. I mean, anything digital just isn't safe anymore.
Visit Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.com. When you're on the site, you can also tune in 24 hours a day to my daily radio broadcast. There's also a free iPhone app to listen to the syndicated radio show when and where you want.